done.
You like the animation? Great to have you, Ray, here. I'm super excited about our fireside chat today. I'm Rasmus, co-founder of Merantix and co-initiator of the AI House. And I mean, Ray, you don't need an introduction, but I'll still make a short one. I mean, you've founded Bridgewater Associates, I think, almost 50 years ago now, and turned it into one of the largest asset managers and investment companies, and also the most successful ones in the world. And I think what's interesting is you really wrote down a lot of insights about like systems thinking, about the financial work, about decision making, management, and I think really inspired both the investment world, but also everyone beyond who's outside of that. I mean, I'm sure many of you read one or several of his books, and we might also give out some books later at the end of the session today. So yeah, I'm super excited. I think more recently you've been also like very active talking more about AI, and so today really the topic is of AI, and I'm really excited to have this discussion with you. We'll have some questions at the end, so maybe think already about smart questions to ask Ray. But actually, like when I prepared for that, I also like cheated a bit, like how people do these days, and used an LLM to prep. And I didn't use any LLM. Like I could have just done ChatGPT, but I actually logged into Digital Ray. Some of you might know Ray actually has a digital version that kind of incorporates a lot of his principles. It's still in private beta, but I was kind of asking a bit and was like, okay, how to open this up? Best to ask Ray himself. And so actually, my first question is around kind of, you're saying that there's like kind of 5 forces really like defining where the world is going. And one of them is technology. And obviously, one of the key technologies these days is AI. So maybe start off really with like putting it into broader context of how AI is influencing the world, the cycles you have been discussing, and start there. Yeah.
Well, AI started in 1956, and I've been doing AI. AI means artificially taking the computer and letting the computer make decisions, which is actually a lot beyond what AI is now doing as we think about the future. But I did it in the form of expert systems. So I got in the habit, and I recommend this habit to everybody. Whenever I would make decisions, I would think, what are my criteria? What are my reasons for making decisions? I would pause and reflect. I would write them down, or I would dictate them into my iPhone. What are my criteria for making decisions? And then I found that I could take those criteria and I could put them into code. And so I created, at Bridgewater, I created the company, but I also created essentially this decision-making machine that it would run automatically like a computer chess game that was made by an expert system, and it would run in parallel because it would have, it runs, and it's the same today. Data feeds come in, makes decisions, executes orders, the orders come back, the whole thing is automated like a factory, an automated factory. That's the way I do it. And so then AI has evolved. People think of it as a new word, new thing, okay? So I think the important thing that I would like to emphasize is criteria for your decision making. Pause, reflect. What are your, I call them principles. What are your principles? What are your rules? How does the machine work? You're interacting. There are cause-effect relationships. Okay, how does that machine work and how do I interact with it? So naturally, it's fantastic. But it really is new to a lot of people in a sense. And the issue is it a decision maker? Okay, I think, like, can you have it make decisions? We were talking earlier about your decisions, okay, your business and how you're running your business and so on, okay? If I do my job right, when you'll go on Digital Ray and you'll get the answers to those questions. And if you do your job right, you will get in the habit of doing it, and it will then educate the AI, and then you will have that operating, and you'll reflect on those criteria, and it'll help you. So I think this is just a continuation of that which happened before. Of course, it's a very exciting continuation.
when you started, I mean, like using algorithms back then and incorporate your decision making into those, I mean, what did other people say about that? I mean, it was not that common, I guess, when you started initially.
No, and it's still not common.
Yeah, that's the thing. But like that's why I'm imagining even now. I mean, it's not common. So what was it like a few decades ago?
It's so interesting. Like today, okay, I'm in the investment management business. Okay, I know all these people. I know everybody who's big deals in the investment management business. Let's say they run sovereign funds or they're asset management and so on. They're interested in AI. They want to do AI, but they don't use it. I mean, they don't make their decision. They have an AI their brain. So what's happening now? There's an epiphany now. It's different. Before it took explanation. Before it took explanation, like I don't know that I can quantify everything. And it's true, you can't quantify everything. So, but you can quantify, I got to quantify 98% of all decision making. So I would occasionally make a discretionary decision that I would control in a certain way. So you can do a lot of that. Nowadays, I'm getting a different reaction. The reaction is, like I explained to people, the idea of being the smart one, wrestling around with ideas in your head and making a decision is obsolete. Okay, you need the partner. So now I'm getting open-mindedness of how. So, yeah. And then it's so much easier after it's work. Like you said, this will be my 50th year since I started Bridgewater. Okay, became the largest hedge fund in the world. It worked. I passed it along and so on. But it's easier when something works that you could show that it works.
Yeah. But I guess also now with your digital Ray, I mean, people are much more used to co-pilots now. So the adoption of something like this, I mean, people might be much more open because they're actually open to interacting with a smart system and getting advice.
That's right.
Decision making.
That's right. But the key is to quality control it and educate it. Okay? Are every one of those answers what I would give? So you have to go in there but that's right. That's where we are. But now the question is, that's listening. Okay? The real exercise is, can you put it on automatic pilot to get there with steps? Your decision making, other people's decision making, and
what's your view there? Like, do you think it can get fully automated, or
yes, it's fully automated. Yeah. I'm totally comfortable. Yeah. I mean, mine is, but that's from that. But you have to deal with the fundamental element of cause-effect relationships, and in the markets, it's different and it's more difficult. Yep. Because anything that's known in the markets is not worth very much. I mean, meaning because it gets into the price. So you have to be able to be smarter than the other, but they can't know it, and so. But yes, you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it 2 weeks ago in the healthcare.
You have to do it. You have to. Everybody in this room has to start doing it. Has to start that experience. You have to start doing it. Because otherwise you'll be left behind and you'll be inferior. Yeah. So, and not doing it will mean it's a learning experience. It's like any kind of learning experience. You don't know in the beginning, but you learn.
And even, I guess, when you follow the actions, you get feedback if the action was actually good or bad.
Of
in the markets,
course.
I mean, you make money. In other areas, I mean, you also get immediate feedback. So that can also then be fed back in the model.
Right. I think the first thing is, does it capture what the decision making? Another thing that for me was I realized is you don't need all the decision rules to make all the decisions all the time. You only have to make the decisions when you want to make the decisions. So if I had one decision rule that is a really good always decision rule, and I would sit and wait, I could do that. But as you accumulate them, you make more and more decision rules, and then it's better. But we're here. That's the topic. You need to do this.
But I guess, also making the decision when there's too much uncertainty of not making a decision at all or not engaging. I mean, that's also
but you can run it next to you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this computer chess game. Yeah. It plays, I play, then you reconcile those. If it can't, okay, that's okay, but try to reconcile.
And do you feel comfortable it being a black box? I guess even digital, Ray. I mean, you've probably tested it, but it's still like.
For me, it can't be a black box.
Yeah.
Okay. Because a basic thing about this, if the future is different from the past, and it's a black box, you're going to blow up. Yeah. Unless if the future is different from the past. Yeah. So I think it's really partially understanding the cause-effect relationships. So it's fantastic learning. Learning is fun. So, but the black box part of it is, if the future is different from the past, you know, it's a problem.
So where do you think these AI models need to go? They just inherently need to be explainable, or you need to basically stress
this? It's like a partner.
Yeah.
You know, make it a great partner.
Yeah. So still have the humans in the loop ideally, and like not automated.
That's right. Yeah. That's going to be true for the foreseeable future. Yeah. What an advantage.
And how's the investment world going to change? I mean, if more people adopt these systems, what will change to the market? Will anything change?
Of course. It's like everything. It's going to get, of course, much more advanced, much more required. The skill of being able to do it will be important. It'll be that zero sum. It'll still be zero. Alpha will be zero sum. And it's a test of the talent and the technology.
And in terms of application areas, I mean, like the financial sector is one.
But you can start. I just want to again emphasize. Don't wait for excellence. Yep. Okay? Just play with it. Just do it and learn and dive in. And you could ask questions. Could I say one more? I'm
sure. I mean, we have time.
I don't want to interrupt you. Sometimes my answers go on too long. If you'll start to think differently. Let's say, for example, right now, the brain needs to simplify things. So let's say when I'm dealing with, let's say, Federal Reserve official or central bankers or something, like a good example would be they use inflation. And the reason they use inflation is because it's a simplified number. So maybe they have 5 different measures. It's all simplified. But nowadays, you can go to each particular thing and its price and its transaction in each particular location. And you could ask the computer, essentially, okay, what was it that made up that in terms of these particular things and so on? So the degree of understanding is totally greater than the human mind can do, but not when interacting with it the right way. It can't do it all for everything. So you'll start thinking differently and so on. Just immerse yourself in it and then go back again and think about, what are my criteria? What criteria did I use for making that decision?
And what was your personal feedback loop? I guess as you encoded more things into algorithms and then maybe also realized things need to change over time, rules need to change, adjusted, like how is that feedback loop working? Or how is that?
Well, it's like anything else. It's you learn to ski, you fall, you maybe ask an instructor or whatever you find out, you make a turn in a different way, it's like, I think life in general is more like a video game. That what you do is you go after your goals and you encounter your problems and then you have to figure it out, or maybe ask somebody and they help you figure it out and you learn, then you get around your problems and then you get better and better.
That's a great analogy, yeah? And you have 3 lives, or?
Who knows with AI? I don't know.
I mean, and like beyond the financial sector, what are some other areas of application you're
Everything.
Everything. So there's
everything. Because, you started with the 5 forces. Yeah. So maybe there's a good time to
come to the question, to the first question.
Your first question. Right. Okay. So I'm a global macro investor, and that means all over the world, all countries, and then I also study I need to study history, how things work, and so on. And I put out a book that, if you're interested, it's called The Changing World Order: Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order. Anyway, to oversimplify, but it's true. There are 5 big forces that operate together. First, there's the credit turns into debt, and that credit buys things. It buys goods, services, and financial assets, and that makes markets, and it makes an economy, and that is the first force. So that if you follow how the money and credit is working and so on, how it'll be the force, economic funny force. Second force is a force of internal conflict between people, and between the rich and the poor, between the left and the right, between the conservatives and we're in the middle of that. And that's the how people's money and values and the conflict, and then the ideologies associated with, and how that produces internal conflict and so on. That'll also affect taxes. It will affect policies and so on. You have to understand that. We're in the middle of that right now. We're going to have new policies. What are the taxes? What's going to be? It's going to have an effect. Number 3 is the geopolitical. There's a world order. The last world order started in 1945. Traditionally, you have a war. Whoever wins sets the rules, and then you have a system, and then rising powers challenges existing power, and that system changes. And so that's number 3, the rivalry with China and such things. Okay. Number 4 is acts of nature. Droughts, floods, and pandemics have killed more people than wars, and changed more orders, toppled more orders than that. Droughts, floods, and pandemics, nature. And, we see it. Los Angeles is burning. I mean, it's something. So nature, and they're all related. Like the amount, it's going to be costly. In one way or another, the climate thing is costly. You have wars. They're costly. They have financial impacts. And number 5 throughout history is man's inventiveness, particularly of technologies, new technologies. And in my opinion, I've watched this, the printing press, the Industrial Revolution, all of these things, nothing has come close to AI, in my opinion, because it's intelligence about everything. So it's going to create a tremendous change, and they're all going to interrelate. So like the technology war related to AI is going to be connected to the military war, each country, and so on. So those are the 5 big forces. So for me to understand the 5 big forces, I need data, I need these tools and so on to understand and to deal with them. I need rules, decision rules. What if under these circumstances, if I did that, how and how does it work?
So, but then, if AI, as you said, is like kind of the big technological force right now, like what should governments do, or entrepreneurs, to change the world order or remain in the world order even, right? Like how do you think about this from a policy perspective?
Well, there's policy and
entrepreneurial.
And then there's people.
Yeah, people, yeah.
So the question, like, you're responsible for what you do, and then those who set policy.
So what should we do here in the room, I guess?
I mean, you better learn it and be good at it and make the most of it. That's what you need to do, and I want to emphasize that. Okay, then you could talk about what policies, how can you regulate in the. But you can't adequately regulate it. Yeah. Also, think about even regulation. The word regulation, the act regulation, is only something that we get some sense of because we're living in a country that has laws, police, regulations, and so on. when you go internationally, what is the law, police? I mean, it's self-interest. So, and it's an international thing.
Yeah, I mean, it will be hard to regulate it globally, right? Because there's like national interests, and like everybody will come up with their own systems and rules.
Right, and this is like natural selection, and then, okay, you're going to lose out?
Hopefully
Let's think
not.
about a China-America
Yeah.
technology chip war.
Yeah.
Okay, are you going to restrain yourself?
No, I mean, like we need to invest in chips. We need to continue to use chips, right? Like we need to continue to have access to it, but it's challenging.
So, woo, we're going forward.
And I mean, today you wrote something around, or you were interviewed around the like UK debt cycle. Not looking that great. And I guess generally debt has been like a big topic you recently wrote quite a bit about.
Yeah.
Can AI solve that through higher productivity, or at least partially have a positive impact on that?
Yes. I mean, it's two things. If we, I think AI over its period of time will have great impact on productivity in all different dimensions of our lives. And that'll be very, very beneficial in ways that we can't yet imagine. Then you have to deal with how do you redistribute wealth and incomes and so on, because it's very nature. I mean, even if you look at the tech boom and how the tech boom is taking place, basically those who are involved and are behind it are basically about 3 million people out of a country of 330 million people. And in that country, 60% of the population has below a 6th grade reading level. So how do you deal with that?
How to fix that, right?
How
Please
are you going
tell
to?
us.
No, so how people deal with each other, how people deal with each other in nature, like the biggest question of our time is how we're going to deal with each other in nature. If we don't, when we think it can raise productivity, but how does that work? How are we going to decide that? And it may not happen in the right way soon enough. And how does it actually happen? Like we can have a debt problem this year because we have a problem. By the way, I wrote this. It's online. I'm unfolding it. I'm writing the book, sort of a book, and I'm putting it out in 4 parts, and then it'll be free for anybody online. They can get a PDF of it. But you have a supply-demand problem. So in other words, a large deficit means you have to sell a lot of bonds. And the quantity that has to be sold relative to the quantity that's likely to be bought is a problem. And if people start to realize it's a problem, then they want to sell it. And then the problem gets worse and it kind of feeds on itself. That can happen soon. Okay, that's a possibility. And then that changes everything because it changes the term structure of rates. Term structure of rates affects everything.
So I guess we all have to go back to work and like really make sure we get AI deployed quicker than this happening. I mean, back to your point about like productivity gains. I guess, I mean, right now there's already quite big concentration. I mean, if we talked about chips, I mean, we talked about a few tech companies. Also, I mean, the productivity and impact very, very small teams can have now with AI. Basically creating companies, you don't need maybe that many people anymore because you can automate anymore. So like, where will this lead us like in like 5 or 10 years? Like, will you have, and how to deal with that? I mean, will you just have to redistribute wealth? I mean, there's like universal basic income, there's like these ideas, or is there other ways, or do you think there is a way where AI can become?
One thing most fundamentally, you have to reach an agreement of how.
Yeah.
So you'll probably fight over how. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's.
I don't know. That's the adventurous thing of the future. We will find out. You go with the flow and do the best you can.
Sounds like a good
The
plan.
future is not known.
Yeah.
Not knowable. So that's also how you play the game. How do you diversify well? You know.
I mean, maybe.
The first sentence of my first book, and it's with me every day, is I think it was something like the first thing I want to do is to establish the fact that I'm a dumb shit who doesn't know that what I don't know is much greater than what I do know. So it's something like that. In other words, knowing how to deal with what you don't know is more important than anything you know. I think that's where we are, right? What we don't know is much greater than what we do know. And then the question is, how do you deal with what you don't know well, right? So those are elements like how you diversify, in other words, who's smart, who are you around. There are ways to deal. It's like if you have I want to simplify it, but let's say you have you're sick, you have a disease or something. Now, the general answer, the best thing, diversify well, balance your risks, and then also triangulate well. Find the smartest people you can, triangulate well, learn, be happy to change your mind to get to the best answer. These are certain rules of how do you deal with what you don't know. In the future, we are at a moment. I mean, I would say take yesterday as a moment. You could put that line on the calendar yesterday, right? That is a moment of a new reality with a lot of unknowns.
What would you do today? I mean, if you had to start another company today, like what kind of company would you start for the next 50 years?
Well, I always like mine because I can bet on anything, anywhere from long or short.
It's pretty broad, yeah.
Okay, meaning I have no good excuse. Every industry since I've been around has had cycles, big cycles. I went when I graduated at Harvard Business School. There was I noticed in every time since what happened is that whatever the largest percentage increase in graduates from Harvard Business School, short the industry.
I think you're here in the wrong audience.
What I mean is, everything goes in cycles. Yeah. I mean, there are good times and bad times. Things become expensive. Keep in mind, it's not just a good business. Is it in markets? And is it good pricing? So technology, like the dot-com bubble, okay? Technology, can do fantastic and so on, and you can get annihilated because of the pricing and the things. So you ask me my business, I can be in anything, and I can get out tomorrow. I could short it. I can be long anywhere in the world. I like that. So I like that game.
So you would start Bridgewater again, basically.
Yeah.
That's the answer. And now I have to ask this question. Obviously, I don't know the statistics, but it's probably most people, if you ask at HBS right now, want to do AI. So where are we in the hype cycle? I understand things. You saved yourself with the pricing part. Things are partially expensive, but the other way to talk about it is say, look, like we're just at the beginning of adoption if you look at real
That's true.
So maybe we underestimate it still.
Well, one of the things, I think it depends where. I think on the superscalers and everything, that's one story. I think, just to give you my view, I think that's a very risky thing because that's a fight that nobody can afford to lose. That's even more important than profits. So when you have countries or you have the superscalers or something, and you have a competition, profits is secondary, and it's where the hype is. Okay, I think that in the applications or the transformations, the companies that are using it to radically improve themselves and so on, they are not understood. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. There's not the hype. So that would be more, that's what I'm more interested in.
I mean, that's also what we focus on as an investor. And I mean, again, comparing it maybe to the previous cycle, it's a bit like, I guess, Cisco was a sizable company because they built the boxes to get into the internet. It's still a decently sized business, but the real big ones were the application companies that were enabled through the internet. And so you could make a similar argument now for AI, right? Like that, yes, chips and, foundation models are a big business right now, but like the real big value comes when it's applied to specific problems in industry.
Yes, I think that we'll have these verticals and platforms, and there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's not priced in.
And we talked about it before when we sat together. We talked a lot about like building the right teams, getting the right people together. For a lot of people here, they're in companies, they're building maybe startups, maybe they're building research teams. Like, maybe share a bit more about like how you've been building teams, what's important, how to select people.
Well,
culture, like.
Okay. Your culture, your people in your culture are your destiny. Are they clear? Then I'll speak to that which I believe to be true. There are values, abilities, and skills. People overemphasize the skills. Skills are incredibly important. But most important is the values. When I mean abilities, it means, somebody's more likely to be able to learn how to ski, play piano, or whatever. That's an ability that hasn't yet become a skill. Okay, and how you are with your nature and what that culture is very, very important. I have found that, so you have to know what people are like. I put out tests that I built for myself called Principles U. It's online. It's free. Anybody can take the test. If you, so I recommend it. It takes, 20, 30 minutes or something. It'll tell you a lot, and it'll tell you about each other. When we started to do that, different types of tests, Myers-Briggs and so on, we would then understand what people are like, how they think differently. And if you have to know, because what I'm saying is, it's like a marriage, or it's like a group. Can you stay together? How do you make decisions? What is your process? It can't be autocratic, I don't believe, and it can't be democratic. Autocratic of just giving orders. First of all, nobody's good enough to be able to have all the answers. So I thought, for me, I wanted an idea meritocracy. In other words, I wanted the best ideas to win out, wherever they came from. And I wanted what I call meaningful work and meaningful relationships through radical truthfulness and radical transparency. That's what I want. But you have to decide on your culture how you're going to work it. When there's ups and downs, and when there's doubts and choices that are made, and all of that, and then there's so much more. That's really what the first book I wrote on is Life and Work Principles. So I could go on, but Life and Work Principles. Think, what are your principles? What works? So there's a bunch in the book.
And what's ahead for last question before?
By the way, again, emphasizing writing them down and thinking.
Making them explicit.
Like I didn't go write a book. What I did was, when I was in a situation, I would always reflect and I'd write down, How does it work? What are the cause-effect relations? How does that work? What principles should I use for dealing with it so it works well? And then I would communicate that with everybody in the organization, and I would have them challenge me on it so we could talk about it, debate it, and so on. And then I built, and I did that for necessity. So I recommend that.
What inspired you to do that in the first place? Was it really just the way you thought and reflecting, and then you realized it's helpful for other, or
Two things. Two things. First, when I remember the year, I had 67 people work for me because it was the holiday season. And what I would do for the holiday season all the time was individually pick holiday gifts, and I would write them long notes, and it was backbreaking. So it dawned on me that my type of communication, something in that vicinity of 70, 100 people or something, is the number of people where you're not going to have that type of communication. So I want to communicate well. So when I went, I had up to 1,500 people. How do I do that and communicate that way so we know each other? So that was one. And the second, and I found through the experience of writing them down and thinking about them that I would think better, more deeply, and so on. And then it was the same for the markets decision. Like I wanted to write down my criteria so that I could test how would they have worked in these different environments. So I would write them down. So both of those things led me to do that.
And what's ahead for Digital Ray? Last question before I open it up to the audience. Like, I mean, what's next for Digital Ray?
Digital Ray on life and work principles is getting very high grades, meaning if we were to talk about that, you can talk about it, and it's getting to know, you can flick a switch and say, do you want to get to know me or not? And you can flick a switch, and it can get to know you, and it can operate that way. So I feel good about that. It's not where I want it to be for investment principles yet. I'm doing that. And I did a course for investment principles that I passed along, which anybody can take. It's called Singapore's Wealth Management Institute puts it out, and it has 100% recommendation to take the course. You know, people have taken it, so I want to then embed that. In other words, it's a tool that I'm having that will be helpful in everything that I'm doing and others are doing. I think others should do it. They're wonderful, smart people other than me. There are many smart, fantastic people, some of which I've spoken with, who they have a problem because they haven't written down their principles. You know, they don't, but I would like to, whatever the best knowledge is, but it has to be curated. We're still not in the situation where you can go get advice.
But I mean, that could be really the next stage, right? Like when you open it up to other people to also ingrain their principles and.
Yes, I'm going to put it out, whatever it is. I'd like to create the vehicle that people can do it. But I think it's very connected to, are you writing them down? Are you
making explicit?
Thinking about, like, are you making your criteria clear?
Yep.
Your decision-making criteria clear?
Yep. Let's open it up to the audience. Lots of questions. First question here in the front row.
For a founder in the early stages of building a tech company?
You know, so many, but people and culture. And the journey. So I just want to give those two words because everything will come down to who are you with. This is a relationship that you're going to have, that you're going, okay, I picked originally people I like and their friends and so on, and that could be a problem. So people and culture, what is your culture? And then you go on your journey and recognize I believe success is a 5-step process. I don't want to go on too long, but set your goals, know what your goals are, which helps set your priorities. On the way to your goals, you will encounter your problems and your difficulties and your failures. Number 2. Number 3, so make sure you identify them and you don't tolerate them. Number 3 is get at the root cause of those problems, which can also be you're not making good decisions your way and maybe not the best. Number 4 is then design a way around them. And then number 5 is do it. And I mean, that's like life with the video game kind of thing. That's too long of an answer, so I just would keep it to those 2 words, people and culture.
Maybe the back.
So I learned that it makes sense to have an uncorrelated asset portfolio, right? But now with the whole world betting on AI, how would you hedge AI in your portfolio?
There's all different kinds of AI and applications to AI. What application? I think as almost generalization, there's you have to specialize enough that you have your edge, your insights that others don't have, but you can't specialize so much that you can't have diversification. So when I'm looking at AI, I would be thinking about, on all the uncorrelated opportunities that exist in its various dimensions, that I would have better knowledge than the competition to make those decisions.
Here in the front.
I'm curious about your T-shirt. Okay, make that a work. Yeah.
You told us about how AI affects industries, governments, etc., etc. I am curious how AI affects Bridgewater Associates and everyday life at Bridgewater, even though you have been doing AI for 5 decades.
Well, I think it's a big, complicated question that I think you better ask Bridgewater.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe they're in the back.
I passed Bridgewater along. I'm still on the board. I'm still a large shareholder and all of that. But I always want to let them speak for themselves.
Mr. Dalio, my name is Nick Bilogorski.
Right.
I run a Nova Ukraine charity fund in Stanford, and my question is about the war in Ukraine. Do you have any kind of personal thoughts about it? Have you done anything about it? Have you had any opportunity to meet with Vladimir Putin or Zelensky? Kind of share what you think.
I have views about it. I made donations to help to provide some little bit of less misery. I hope. I have had one meeting with Zelensky. Since this has happened, I haven't had a meeting with Putin. And I think we're coming to some form of wind down.
So Ray, at the beginning of Bitcoin, you were pretty skeptical of Bitcoin, and now you waved the flag for us. Can you tell me the thought process?
With all due respect, that's your characterization. I have a different character, but if you want to know, I'll tell you.
So, what was the thought process of the change of heart, shall we say?
I don't think I've. There's an evolution, and things have happened over time. So I wouldn't say that I. But here's what I've always thought, and here's what I think the important thing to think about. First of all, I'm anti-money as we are dealing with. Debt is money. Money is debt. And what I mean by that is debt is a promise to receive money. So the only value of it will be whatever value money has. And there's too much debt. And then money is held in the form of debt. Okay, so I'm anti that. Now the question is, what's the best way to deal with that? What do you hold that's the equivalent of money? Something that you can use it anywhere, it's accepted anywhere. So money is a medium of exchange and a storehold of wealth. What is the best? Okay, now I prefer gold. However, I have some Bitcoin, a small amount of Bitcoin, and I've had a small amount of Bitcoin for a long time for the following reason, my thinking. Okay, few reasons. Privacy, the issue of privacy. You're not going to have privacy with Bitcoin, okay? Meaning the government and everybody is going to follow it. If the government doesn't like it, and they can, it's a great thing for the government. They could tax you on it. They could just take it in various ways and so on. So that doesn't have those elements. It's not held as a central bank reserve. I don't think, at least maybe it happens in the future, but I don't think it's going to be held for central bank reserves because nobody wants another government going to be able to come in there and take it or do what they want with it. So that's a problem. Whereas gold is, okay, because there's a saying, in gold, it's the only asset that you can hold, essentially money that you can hold, that isn't dependent on somebody giving you something, okay? So that's why I prefer gold. It's existed for thousands of years in all of those, so I prefer gold. And also, the behavior of Bitcoin is very difficult to make sense of a lot because it's very still heavily a speculative vehicle. And so, whereas the supply demand or the if inflation rises, does gold rise? So the reliability of the cause-effect relationship is better with gold. So that's been my kind of view, but even if it wasn't my view, I'd be happy to tell you what my view is. So that's why I'm in, but it's a younger person's gold and so on, and people should think I think they emphasize one versus the other too much. Okay, I'm into diversification, so I want enough of each.
Do you feel like you have enough of each?
I do.
So you're not buying any
for
more?
what? For a long while. For a long while, I've felt I've had enough of each. There's a right amount. Okay.
Can you define what a right amount is for us?
Yeah. I think that you need the right amount of some mix of those. Either is between 10 and 15% of one's portfolio. That's mathematically the right amount, and it's also a diversification. When I say mathematically, because of the correlation, when things go bad, that'll worry on your other portfolio. These things go good, okay? And because of their relative volatilities and so on, that's it's closer to the 15% number, but somewhere in that vicinity. Be careful about more, be careful about less.
We can have maybe one more question. Maybe there in the back, white shirt.
Yeah, I'm just curious. How do you think about the value of data or information in the future? Because you could make the argument that AI will kind of replace the necessity to have data in the first place because it will give it to you, or you can say you need the data to make AI really work. So looking at Moody's, Morningstar, S&P, they're all trading quite well for the fact that there's AI out there and they're predominantly data companies, right? And so I'm just wondering if you have a view on the original value of data or information in the age of AI.
For as long as I've been at this, I've considered data to be invaluable. So for decades, and now my availability of data, the quantity I can have of valuable data, is vastly greater than it ever was. But it's incredibly invaluable, and so I don't know what you mean by the other part. Yeah, it gives it to you. If it gives it to me, I don't know. If it gives it to me, I like it. I love data.
Right, and you want to continue to be data provider in the world of AI, or do you want to be?
I don't care about providing it. I care about having it.
That's a great final statement, right? Thanks so much for this discussion about so many topics, Ray. That was great having you.